Hi, welcome back to The Secret Library. If you're just joining us now, I encourage you to also check out the Secret Library podcast. This week on the show, we were talking about boundaries. And one of the most important boundaries writers face is whether or not to talk about your book with other people while you're still working on it. First, I want to suggest the following slightly controversial statement, which is you don't have to talk about your book with anybody if you don't want to or you don't feel comfortable talking about it yet. So know that from the beginning. However, as we are starting to move back out into the world, we're starting to be at social gatherings again, you may get the most challenging of all the questions I think writers face, which is, oh, what's your book about? Oh, I find this one so difficult for a number of reasons. First of all, a book is hundreds of pages and I may be at any stage in the process of creating it. I make tons and tons and tons of creative decisions. You know this if you've worked on it. It's very hard to sum that up into a quick little soundbite. And then beyond that, it's really vulnerable to share something that you've put so much effort and energy in. And if the person you're talking to is not a writer, they may not understand just how much is riding on what their reaction is to what you say. If you've ever had the experience where someone's asked, what's your book about? You fumble along and try to answer the question, and then they say something like, oh, I don't really read that type of book. And you feel just crushed or just discouraged by people's responses. There's another way you can answer this question, which is a little bit sneaky, but manages to skirt the balance between being polite and sociable, but also protecting yourself as a writer. I must say, I learned this trick from a writing teacher of mine, Scott O'Connor, who I studied with back in LA, and I have used this tip ever since. So here's how it goes. If somebody asks you, what's your book about? You make a subtle little pivot, and instead of telling them the details of the story, talk about the details of how you're working on it right now and what your process is. They often won't even notice this shift, and getting to see inside of your process is just as satisfying as knowing what the story's about, and I find it's way less vulnerable. So let's go with an example. What's your book about? Instead of answering, it's about a woman who is going through the end of a relationship and figuring out who she's going to be for the rest of her life, which would be about the story, answer it by saying, well, I'm working really hard on developing my character's emotional life. And that means I'm thinking a lot about how it would feel to be in various difficult situations. I'm doing a lot of journaling and thinking about situations that I've faced, others I know have faced. When I watch films, I'm really paying attention to the emotional impact different situations have on characters so that I can more effectively communicate strong emotion in my book. That would be an example of talking about the process. I'm certain that the person you're talking to will find it just as fascinating, and it might even spark a conversation that goes off in a different direction. Plus, you haven't revealed a thing of what your book is about, and you get to have a thoughtful conversation about writing. I hope this has been helpful. If you like this video, please make sure to like and subscribe. And again, if you want to dive deeper into the topic of boundaries for writers, I recommend that you check out the Secret Library podcast, where we go into a more in-depth exploration of this really important topic. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out Scott O'Connor's website linked in the show notes below. He's not only a wonderful writing teacher, but an incredible writer with many books out that I recommend you check out. Thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next video.